We're just missing Rangeley Plantation, right?
Looks that way. We don't have any adjustments to the agenda. Do you have any old business that you want to go over with before we go to the timeline? I don't know.
What is old business? What is old business?
Well, I mean, there have been some extenuating questions that have been dangling up there for a while. I didn't know if you had anything.
I have
that
a
you wanted-
few questions.
Fire away.
In light of the $100+ million funding that's available to the state of Maine from the federal government, I'm wondering if we have explored or anyone has explored how that would impact this situation, specifically because the 20-year bond cannot be bought down by any of that grant money. And that grant money so it can't be applied to this project. So I'm wondering, is there someone who's looking into these implications and if it changes the situation in any way?
Daryl and I have talked about it briefly. Kate and I talked about it a little bit. To answer your question, as far as I know, nobody has looked into it officially at this point. We've talked
Who would
about
be
it.
responsible for looking into that? Is there a point person or?
We had talked about the hiring or partnering with Franklin County Community Development and having those guys. That was brought to us by, I lost his name. What was it?
Charlie.
Charlie.
Woodward.
I would object to that.
You would object to that?
Yes, Charlie has not helped our process. The original proposals came to us without an RFP. And the first one was done when we all got together in February of last year.
Mm-hmm.
Second proposal came in June and wasn't forwarded until October.
Mm-hmm.
And that compromised the proposals that were put forward because it was not done under an official RFP. I don't believe he understands the municipal process. I do believe that he has moved down more. I know he's doing work with the Bangor area. I think that fellow Brian Lippold is better versed in looking at those types of funds, but we also have advocates within the municipal and we have state reps that look at funding. The funding that Julian's referenced was announced yesterday in the governor's plan, and the infrastructure is in the long range outlook for infrastructure. One of the more recent developments has been, and I believe I forwarded to everyone, was that Connect Maine is looking to change the parameters of what is considered unserved.
That was another one of my questions.
Where we we don't qualify right now. And all of the funds for Maine are going to unserved communities. Fair enough, they have nothing. We are underserved based on 25/3.
Yeah.
Dallas Plantation tested out as the worst served. We're kind of what they call not last mile, but middle mile, because we abut an unorganized territory in Bennington, and we're looking at going all the way out to serve the Navy base, Poland Springs Pump House, with, as soon as you go over the last,
pull internet off of Saddleback Mountain, off Saddleback Connections?
I don't know, that's still done. It's an E91 address, and that's what's been used to determine the scope, the cost of this network. That Connect Maine 50/50 would elevate all four municipalities to over 90% qualified as unserved. They are looking for public comment right now in the municipalities, and the committee should speak up, I believe, with the support of our state reps in Fran Hyde and Russell Black. That would go a long way. Having said that, I do not believe we have a clear answer on going for a bond and then applying for grant monies. In my experience, once you fund it, you're done. Nobody wants to be giving money to an organization or a project that's funded. Everybody has a need. So when they prioritize, we're just not gonna get there. And we've spoken a lot about going for it and then applying for grants. I don't believe we've had a definitive answer.
Right, I think the point that Bubba brought up a few meetings back, look into this, but that just extends and extrapolates time farther and farther and farther out.
He was specifically talking about the infrastructure,
Yeah, I
total
understand.
budget that hasn't even made it through Congress. It might get to the floor this summer, then it has to go through the Senate. That's eons away. Right now, what's going on in the state of Maine is Connect Maine is establishing an authority to distribute funds they have right now.
Money that's already here.
No, that's fine.
And
Still an application time frame.
and they are looking to redefine the parameters of what qualifies as underserved. So,
What Charlene told me from, what's her name's office, Susan Collins' office, was the money is there, but there's still not the plan on how to issue.
right, and then they'll go through state process. I've been speaking with Collins, Kane, Golden, Black, all of them. Everybody wants to help.
No, I know.
Everybody is selling what they have done, but it still has to get through this state process. So when we talk about the funds that are available and might be available, it doesn't seem to suit the plan that we're moving forward with.
Okay. Let's do, is there any other, because this is a good conversation, but we just make sure we get all of this done before Joe and I have to leave. Are we good with this? Are we good with this part,
Yes.
which is the timeline?
It is what it, well, it is what it
It's-
is. Whether it
it's-
happens or
it's
not, there's so many
It is what it
factors.
is, I recognize that, but if there's some serious conflicts that anybody can identify, that's what we need to plug in.
Yeah, I didn't have any, apparent conflicts with the
Okay.
timeline.
Okay, and you didn't either?
Well, no, you have our date, and that's when we'll put the warrant article forward, and then we'll know more.
Right, and we approved the use of that text for our warrant.
Oh, good,
I think I sent you an
You
email
did,
about that.
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Has that been the case with everybody? They've approved it?
Everybody's got it on their warrant,
Our warrant is not finalized yet.
or everybody's gonna have it on their warrant.
Well, it's not final,
Yeah,
but we
it'll-
approved, we agreed
It'll
as
go
assessors that it will be there.
Right, and Rangeley Plantation also agreed, Steve.
Good.
So you're gonna move us, but Rangeley's gonna move ahead for a special town meeting before the results of Sandy River.
Well, that's a good point. So if you look at the timeline, the statement from the bond bank is that they will accept applications, or the deadline is the 1st of August. They don't have an actual day, so I picked the day in the first week of August and worked backwards from there. The only way that's gonna work is if Rangeley, the town of Rangeley goes ahead, schedules a public hearing. It's just the way it's,
That works if only Rangeley's going for a bond. And all municipalities come to get approval to talk about coming together to form an agreement, and the terms are negotiated,
So
correct?
so the July 27th special town meeting, that's there to actually join the interlocal agreement. So remember, there's the question to enter discussions for the interlocal
Right.
agreement. That's what you're gonna be doing up until that point. And then there's the formal vote to join that, interlocal,
Okay, so
create that interlocal
When
agreement.
we vote on, when there's a vote on July 27th to actually form the interlocal agreement.
Yeah.
Prior to that, will each of the entities be informed of what their allocation is in this process, their cost allocation?
When is that gonna be determined?
So that would be something we'd have to talk to CCI about. They have, all they've done at this point is given us percentages, estimated percentages.
And what are those?
I don't remember offhand. We talked about them last time. I can get them to you.
I don't think we came up, I don't know, it's like the last meeting.
Rangeley at 39.8,
Are these-
Rangeley Plantation at 20.9, Sandy River at 16.7, Dallas Plantation at 22.6.
Right. So we'll know as a group at the first town meeting, at your annual town meeting, after that vote, you'll know who has authority to enter the discussion. So if all four of you are going forward, I would assume that ratio is the estimated ratio is pretty reliable. Now, again, it's not final until everybody votes to enter into the interlocal corporation. That's when you would know the actual percentages. So if only 3 towns vote to actually sign the agreement,
Everything changes. again.
everything could change. And that's right. Some algebra here, really, and we don't know
So
exactly.
it's simple.
Well, I suppose.
But that really can't be determined until after the 26th.
Right. Well, actually, we're not voting to say we're gonna do it, we're voting to say that we're willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
So nobody's committed until when? When does the commitment happen?
July 27th.
Okay.
I mean, that's the recommendation on the
Okay.
sheet, subject to change. But
It seems a bit more has to happen than what's on the schedule.
like what?
Negotiating terms of warrant and actual contract with CCI, not a proposed contract that was written for a town in Hampshire
Mhm.
that is compliant with Maine statute. We've got a lot, we still have a lot to fill in here.
I don't disagree. There's a lot of work. This is a framework. This is a skeleton, if you will. I think after May 26th, when on this schedule, the delegates meeting for discussions with the provider, which in this case, we know who that is. You have that discussion, talk about, where we're at, you bring them up to speed. That'll give you some indication or some temperature of what your negotiations may look like, what the contract may look like. And between now and then, you certainly can be formulating questions and be thinking about strategies.
And you think that's all gonna take place between May 26th and June 7th?
No, June 16th would be the next meeting that I've spelled out for discussions with provider. And you would schedule, as you go along, you would schedule subsequent meetings with them as needed. Or you may delegate, folks from your group to negotiate between meetings. I think this group would be good at that, really. So it's meant as a framework, you're right, there probably are items in here that I haven't spelled out at length, but this does give an idea of how much work exists if we're gonna have something ready to present to the bond bank in the 1st of August.
Because it's such a large bond, are there any special things that have to be done?
Well, you will always have to have bond counsel, so each individual town will have to have counsel review it, and they'll check your financial records, just to make sure your debt to,
And that's at the
Debt to
cost of
revenue.
the plantation.
that's a requirement for each entity.
However, CCI had indicated in their proposal that they would pay the costs. And we still haven't determined if we're going for one bond or multiple bonds.
Well, it would be the interlocal corporation that would apply for the bond. So it would be whoever joins the group applies for a bond.
So
That's
what if,
further down
so
the list.
theoretically, we each have a certain amount of stock in the interlocal, like we have whatever our allocation is, that's the percentage of our indebtedness.
That's correct.
But if anything happens with CCI, any one of us can be held 100% responsible?
No, you're creating an LLC. You're creating an entity that will be responsible for it. So Rangeley is bought into whatever percentage they have, Dallas percentage. So if they fail, you're responsible for that percentage, you're responsible.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure about that.
I'm pretty sure of that, but there'll be time for questions and so forth with.
So far, the council we've had, Linda, has suggested that from the get-go. That's
An
the,
interlocal corporation to form a public utility.
I thought I read in the interlocal manual that at any time,
The two joint lands have a way liable.
right, that's what I wondered.
I don't understand how an interlocal agreement could ascribe 100% responsibility to Sandy River Plantation if CCI.
Well, if you defaulted,
Say that again?
if you defaulted or,
If Rangeley defaulted?
or.
Oh, well, I
Dallas-
mean, we all share that risk. I don't think that there's any minimization of that type of risk, but what community has defaulted on those? In the history of interlocal agreements that I've read so far, I know what you're saying in reference to that part of that structure. But I mean, that's a risk every business takes. You certainly,
That's certainly something the Rangeley Plantation has brought up in the past. And that they were looking to stay independent, so. But it's still up for a vote.
right. Yeah. Good points, not trying to minimize it, I think good point, but
We're not calling it on.
the risk is there for all of us. No question about it. Rangeley took that same risk on with cable TV, with Time Warner, and we lost.
We'd like to. avoid
Yeah,
that.
whoever had cable in Rangeley.
We have cable
A lot of
in
people-
Rangeley.
I mean,
We've
all
had
the
3
years
different
I
cable
lived there, I
companies.
never had cable.
Okay,
I just.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can see where that would be.
Okay, so for the next meeting, I have requested Kristen Collins. She hasn't confirmed yet. She's one of our town's attorneys. But I've asked her if she can carve out 15 minutes for us, just to give us an overview of what that framework might look like for the interlocal agreement. Take any questions that you might have.
Could we have a written outline presented?
Yep, if there's, yep. If
she
it's,
hasn't
if it's,
gotten back to you yet?
if it's available, she hasn't yet, but it hasn't been that long since I asked her.
So you're talking for the next meeting, May 12th?
Correct, which is a week from today.
Yeah.
And if, as we roll forward, if we look at this timeline and say we need to adjust it, this is certainly flexible and adjustable to a large degree, but it's made to be a framework of the steps forward. So some of them are hard and fast, but a lot of it, if you can add a meeting or change a time or whatever you need to do.
Can Kristen make that rough draft available to the Board of Selectmen as quick as possible so that they get a chance to review it and do a straw poll with them, and then we'll get it handed out? Sure. Let's do that. Because if we ratify Monday night, that only gives them a day and a half to peek at it before we have our next meeting.
So a legal outline, hopefully.
Right, yeah, I'm thinking this is just gonna be kind of a first discussion about it with her, a framework. If
And
you
then
will.
we'll bring it back to the board?
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just the first go.
I was assuming we were gonna have it Monday night, and then we'll carry on for Wednesday. That's what I was worried.
No, this will be the first review with
Very good.
with these folks, and then the board can see it on the 17th if they want.
Yeah.
This wouldn't be signed until
What can't be?
sometime in late July, if it makes it through all the steps. So it's gonna be in its very early stages when we see it next week.
So when would we ask CCI to give us a draft proposal specific to Rangeley in Maine?
You mean a draft contract?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that.
I have a question about the CCI contract. I mean, this may be a silly question. But if we engage with CCI, we then own the fiber? Is the fiber one of the things that we own?
Yes.
Okay, so if we own the fiber, it's ours. And they decide to upgrade their fiber at any point during those 20 years. What happens to us? Our fiber is the old fiber and we own it. Are we gonna have to pay to get onto the new fiber?
I don't believe so.
No,
But-
there's an agreement in the contract that says they are going to upkeep technology during that time span. So
if
there
they
is an
replace
expectation
fiber-
that there are going to be changes.
Just calling in. Yeah, and we may want to think about a non-compete clause too. I would assume that would be in there where they can't compete with us. or something.
Right. No, it's a joint
Yeah,
collaboration, it's not a competitive situation.
it shouldn't be.
Well, in 20 years, the technology's gonna evolve, something better is gonna come along.
Well, the technology has evolved since we first received the proposal, and the fiber that they were talking about installing is now considered by them to be obsolete, and they have a better product that they're gonna use.
Yes.
So it's,
Who brought this similar point up that you're referencing right now, recognizing that the shelf life of fiber, there's a finite time
Mhm.
that it's good and consistent. He brought that up, they responded where, our intent, that's the word he used, is to keep upgrading. So I'm assuming until all of this is all paid off and we buy the whole system, that continuation of, probably an incorrect assumption on my part, but I think
So we
we'll get
should probably
clarification.
have that specifically detailed in the contract, that any improvements, upgrades, changes in the technology relative to the
Mhm.
fiber would have to be kept current. Does that
see
make
what they
sense?
come back, let's see what they come back with, I'm sure they'll cover it in the they have to cover it in the contract, the 20-year contract.
Right. Keep these questions joined, so when we get them at the tape, in the room with us, we'll get a verbal confirmation, one way or the other. Good question.
So could we target a date for CCI to work towards presenting something so that we hit the ground running after June 26th? When we have a more definite,
I would, so the plan, the strategy is to do some things in parallel. So I would recommend discussing, negotiating with CCI at the same time that we're looking at the interlocal agreement stuff. That's kind of what I spell out here, is kind of do these things in parallel, look at the legal framework, have negotiations with CCI. May 26th, I've got on here for your discussion with the provider. I know that's 2 weeks away, a little less than 2 weeks away.
So are the negotiations in the interlocal contract among the participants exclusive of CCI? I mean, in terms of allocations, like CCI's thrown out their proposed allocations, but suppose I say, well, my user percentage is only 9.7%, and I feel like Sandy River should only contribute 9.7%. is that a discussion that happens among the participants? Or does that happen in the provider discussion?
Participants is my answer.
Sorry?
The participants is my
Okay,
answer.
so it's two separate negotiations.
Yeah, I
that
don't
we're
believe it has
talking
anything
about.
to do, they've given us a parameter to work with.
Okay,
I think when we are structuring the interlocal agreement, if Sandy River says, we only think we need to pay this, there's gotta be some justification, we talk it over, but if that, yeah, I think it's with
okay, so
participants.
participant.
Would you agree,
Two
Linda?
negotiations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we have to come to the table to negotiate, because right now the plantations are paying for 60% of the cost.
I think we're relying on CCI for
But
giving
less
us
than
the data.
50% of users.
I'm sorry, I was talking, I couldn't hear
I'm
you.
sorry. I said, if the plantations are paying 60% of the cost, over 60% of the cost, with less than 50% of the usage, it just seems a little.
However, it's probably 60% of the mileage, given distances, but this isn't for this discussion.
Right.
I just think that they're giving, what I was trying to say a second ago was, they're giving us their estimates
Right.
for those areas, specific regions. That's what we have to work with. What else you got?
Those were my questions. I'm questioned out.
Perfect. Linda?
We just have to roll with it and see what comes up.
I would like to know that there is somebody or some entity or one of your consultants who's really gauging this against what Connect Main's trying to do, so that we don't get stuck in a 20-year contract when Connect Main could have taken care of us. You know what I mean?
Why don't we make that an agenda item for next week, the 12th?
Yeah,
What do you think,
sure,
Steve?
we'll talk it over.
Why don't we get it on the agenda, and I'll get some feelers out on that and see if we can talk about that on the 12th.
Thank you.
Sure.
I believe the deadline for Connect Main, making public comment on raising the speed requirement was the 14th.
Well, should we encourage all of the townships to get in touch with Connect Main and make clear to Connect Main how bad our internet is?
Wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not gonna hurt to give them a call, yeah.
I mean, you have a
So will
Facebook
you
page,
reach
you
out?
might wanna put that on your Facebook page and say, hey,
Yeah.
please contact
Yeah.
Connect Main and.
Okay.
Okay,